Get the home that I grew up in today. Visalia, California. This is big 49ers fan territory, so I think it's a good spot for this Q&A. Will the 49ers continue to add in free agency, or are they done? And you guys know my take on this team building process. They were never involved in the upper tier waves of free agency this year by design. Of course, they may sign a player here and there, and I think there's going to be a lot of roster activity for the 49ers over the course of the next several months before the season starts. But the key part of that sentence is there are several months before the season starts, and the NFL draft plus undrafted free agency is going to come much before any organized team activity happens on the field. And it is at that point where the 49ers are probably going to get a better gauge of which veterans they can add to fill the puzzle. July 21st is another big date. That's right before training camp starts. That's when the compensatory formula no longer is in effect for the 2025 seasons. That's when free agency ends and the 49ers can add players. Maybe somebody like Calais Campbell, if they go through this draft and they add a defensive tackle or two, they look at the roster and they say, okay, we like where we're at because these are two good rookie DTs, but we need a veteran to help shepherd them along. And somebody like Calais Campbell, who's still 38, hasn't chosen a team yet, which I think is really possible. Adding him after July 21st would be the best thing to do for the 49ers because he wouldn't count against the compensatory formula. So I think when you analyze how the 49ers are operating this offseason, you have to look at it with patience. We knew that this was going to be a financial reset for San Francisco. I've done my best to illustrate how that might work with a look at the Rams strategy. That was super rookie oriented. The highest profile free agent the Rams brought in 2023 when they were doing a similar thing as the 49ers right now was Demarcus Robinson. Demarcus Robinson might be the highest profile free agent the 49ers have brought in this offseason. The Rams also let Leonard Floyd go that offseason. The 49ers have let Leonard Floyd go this offseason. So you can see the parallels there, and I think that patience is in order. Everybody, welcome to the 559. Actually, in Shaver Lake, where we did the last few shows, we were also in the 559 area code, but now we are in the San Joaquin Valley. Was it dinner at Amigos? Has anybody been to Amigos over on Acres and Walnut? The place has been around, I think, for a quarter century at this point. I used to go back there in high school. A lot of the greats from this town of Visalia, my hometown, have their jerseys up on the wall. Irv Pankey, Don Mosbar, Mount Whitney High School. Michael Young, Mount Whitney High School. Steve Young had his jersey up there too, because I did say that this is 49ers territory. This is the backyard that I grew up in. I did a lot of swimming in this pool right here, so we can give you guys a little bit of a tour. I figured sunset in Visalia could be a good little show here to talk about the 49ers. Unlike Tahiti, Taha Island, I'm not going to be jumping in because I don't have my swimsuit on, but we can give you guys a little bit of a look at the grounds here. This place, I think we moved here in 1993, I want to say, maybe even 1992. Actually, oh, here we go. Look at this. Back when they were laying the concrete at this pool, December 1992, these are my initials. David Matthew Lombardi, December 1992. So that solves it. December 1992 is when we moved to this house in Visalia, California, where for the first time ever, we can do a little sunset Q&A. I set up a little stand for my tripod so I could just hold the phone here. Do a sunset Q&A. The secret right now is that our internet is actually out inside. The Wi-Fi is not working. But I said, this is perfect. It's a sign that I need to go out here outside. Perfect weather in the valley. It's in the 70s. It's going to be 81 tomorrow, and we can talk 49ers from where we're at. That's cool, though. I totally forgot. I still remember sitting out here with my dad in 1992, and we could contextualize that in 49ers history, but I still remember I was born in 1988, so I was 4.5 years old at that time. We got somebody commenting that Cowhide belongs to Redwood forever. I went to Mount Whitney, so I know that we won. Mount Whitney did. The game I was most closely connected to, we won like 62-20. So that's the last one I remember. I know that Mount Whitney hasn't had a Cowhide success quite like that since 2006. But anyway, I was born in 1988. And in 1992, when I was 4.5, we etched my initials, my dad helped me, etched my initials to the concrete here by this pool. And at that time in 92, that was right before the 49ers lost the first of 2 straight NFC championship games to the Dallas Cowboys. December 92 would precede it. January 93, they lost the Candlestick. Very tough loss. They lost by 10 in that game. Holding penalty called back, a Steve Young to Jerry Rice bomb really early on. That is my first 49ers memory, and it was actually I believe, in this living room. It might have been the first memory I've ever had, to be honest. One of the first. It was definitely the first 49ers memory in the living room. Actually, is that part of the house right behind me. Still remember my dad yelling at the TV when the Cowboys were scoring that late touchdown. Was it Harper? Was it Alvin Harper? It's that long, late touchdown that put that game away. And then the very next year, I don't remember. 49ers lost at Texas Stadium to the Cowboys. The Super Bowl, I don't remember. The 49ers beat the Chargers, and they obviously beat Dallas. And, that game has come to life for me now since I've gotten to talk to Steve Young, Jerry Rice, even Jimmy Johnson. I mean, talked to Jimmy Johnson for a long time. Congratulations to him on his retirement from Fox. But I talked to both sides of that 49ers-Cowboys rivalry back in 2020, 2021, and I wrote a big piece on that 3 years. Those 3 years were unbelievable between those two teams. So the 49ers beat them in the 95 playoffs, January 95, and then the first solid 49ers game that I remember. I do remember my dad upset when the Cowboys beat them in that 92 season, right after we moved into this house in Visalia. But the first game that I vividly remember was the 49ers playing the Packers in the 1995 season, the first playoff game I remember. I think I do faintly remember Jerry Rice throwing a touchdown pass on a trick play to J.J. Stokes that year. That might have been 95 at Atlanta, week 17. Now you're really testing my memory since I was 7 years old at the time. But I remember the 49ers losing to the Packers 27-17. We probably watched it here, or we watched it at my grandpa's place down in Porterville. Those are still all really cherished memories, so it is good to be back. We are open to your questions about free agency, about the NFL draft. Mike will message me some of the best questions because I am looking at my phone and I may not see everything. Yes, get those likes in, get the subscribes in, hit the subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Let's have some fun with this. Nice little casual show on a Sunday night during probably the second most dead part of the offseason. It's going to be dead unless Brock Purdy hasn't signed his deal. It'll probably be dead, though, throughout the month of June, the back half into early July. And then training camp will start, and it's going to get crazy. So why don't we sit down and really enjoy some of this downtime? Are the 49ers going O-line or D-line with the first pick? Corner? I would be absolutely shocked if they picked the cornerback to start this draft. They have invested a lot of picks in cornerbacks since John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan took over in 2017, but never a pick higher than the second round. And Renardo Green was the first time that they went above the third round for a cornerback. So Renardo was last year's second round pick. Obviously, they saw a position that they needed to fortify because they were fairly certain they were going to lose Charvarius Ward. So they drafted a ready-made corner out of Florida State named Renardo Green. How did they know he was ready? Well, because he shut down Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas Jr., and Ricky Pearsall in college. So I think that the 49ers were going for immediate help last year, and I think that was good. I think that they saw the urgency of that 2024 draft. They turned a lot of the thought process behind it over to the R&D, Research and Development Department, in my opinion, based on what I have been able to gather, based on what John Lynch has said, and it worked in 2024. Renardo Green was part of that haul, but back to the question, they still have not picked a corner in the first round, and I think that this team, the defensive backfield could go and play. If there were a game tomorrow, I wouldn't be worried about the 49ers defensive backfield. I like Deommodore Lenoir, I like Renardo Green, and Trey Brown. Let me repeat that Trey Brown, who they just signed in free agency, was the highest graded corner in press coverage in the 2023 season, in the whole NFL, playing for the Seattle Seahawks. So I think he's a fine cornerback 3. He was just hurt last season. And I think that the 49ers front 7 is what needs most work on the defensive side of the football. Mike asks, or somebody asks, is defensive end not an immediate problem for the 49ers? I think that you're constantly trying to pump talent into your team, especially at a position that important in the NFL. I do think that Yetur Gross-Matos showed them a lot last year once he finally got healthy. Remember, he hurt his knee in that preseason game against the Raiders, and I think that slowed Yetur down. But this is a guy who's still only 27 years old, who is, versatile in that he could play inside and outside. The 49ers like his ability to man up on the inside on some of those passing downs and work against guards. We know that Chris Kasarik has toyed with that several times over the course of his tenure with the 49ers, and that goes all the way back to his time coaching the Detroit Lions defensive line. So I think Yetur, when he won that NFC Defensive Player of the Week for that game against Chicago, I think he had 3 sacks. I think he established himself as somebody who the 49ers trust to be able to hold down the side opposite of Nick Bosa, if that's who they have on the roster. It's not a glaring hole for the 49ers on that side. I think they had many bigger problems along the defense and especially along the defensive line than Yetur Gross-Matos last year. That being said, it's never about only 2 defensive ends. You want to have ideally 4 really competent guys. When the 49ers were at their height, they had a rotation of defensive ends who they really trusted. So I still think it is a position of need, but sometimes when people ask me that, they're like, did the 49ers need a starter there right now? And no, I don't think they need a starter there right now. I think they need starting caliber players at defensive tackle. I think that's where the bigger concern lies. But at defensive end, I think Yetur Gross-Matos is a good number 2 for the time being, opposite Nick Bosa. And if you can draft somebody who can develop but give you rotational snaps as a rookie in 2025, then you're a better football team than you were in 2024 if you're the 49ers. So I think that's the smartest way to look at this. Yeah, if there's an edge rusher who you think is the best player available who's somehow on the board when you hit number 11, of course you take him. I mean, you want edge rushers, and you're going to go best player available if you can in this draft. You always should go best player available in the draft. But I think that it's unrealistic to expect game-changing players to be available at number 11 or anytime the 49ers pick. Game-changing players do not come along all too often in the NFL, and you never know exactly who those game-changing guys are going to be. So sometimes you have to get a little more creative once you start assimilating the draft class, and maybe they pick an edge rusher in the 3rd round because it is a deep draft, and maybe that guy has to play behind Gross-Matos and Nick Bosa, and he figures out a way to get into the rotation in 2025, and that's how he makes the 49ers better. So by that, I mean you're always in need of adding some depth at the NFL level, and that depth can mature into a starting position with the appropriate development. And I think with Chris Kasarik as the 49ers defensive line coach, they do believe that the development key is going to be there. Do I think that D. Winters will start? And if so, how do I think he'll do? Well, the one thing I have worried about with him is durability. I think that he's gotten hurt quite a bit when he's been out there. This is a former safety. I think he played some wide out too when he was being recruited to TCU. He was a smaller player, right? And at TCU, they converted him from a safety to a linebacker. We've seen that with a lot of the 49ers linebackers. They really want players who can cover. And D can cover. I mean, we saw him cover DK Metcalf last year. We've seen him flash. He's made some plays. Does he have the durability to play that very violent linebacker position? But, that was a question that Dre Greenlaw didn't answer with 2 thumbs up either. And that's why the 49ers, were ultimately willing to let him go. I know they wanted to keep Dre Greenlaw, but they weren't willing to pay him $15 or $20 million a year to lure him away from the Broncos. They had their limit, and the limit was where it was in large part because his availability was a big question. So I think that a linebacker, too, who can give you some consistent snaps next to one of the most consistent players in football, in Fred Warner, who played through a broken foot last year, that's going to be so important for the 49ers. So if D. Winters can prove that he can stay on the field with an expanded snap count, I think he'll do fine at that linebacker 2 position. I think that he's fast. I think he moves better even than Fred Warner. but the physicality of that linebacker position is what gets a lot of guys. Because, you know, the 49ers want these ex-defensive backs who can cover, but when you're playing linebacker, you're also being counted on to be the first line of defense past that run, right? Right behind the big defensive lineman, you're plugging the gaps, and that can obviously lead to a lot of bruises. So it's going to be really important that D. Winters is able to establish himself in that way. We got a comment that says there's a super taco in Visalia right now. Yeah, the super taco in Woodlake is legendary, about 20 to 30 minutes away from where I am right now. I haven't tried the location in Visalia. I tried Amigos tonight, which is the old school. You know, I say old school, it's brand new back when I was in high school out here, over on the west side of town. Still have good Mexican food. It's like a Mexican sports bar, right? So you got, you have all the TVs, you have all the NFL memorabilia, all that good stuff. You got some Visalia Oaks memorabilia, but then you could get a good burrito. You go through the burrito assembly line to get the food. So I really appreciate Amigos for all they brought to the table. We were able to take my grandma out to dinner tonight, which was really cool. And the family was all out there. Good times in Visalia right now. Mike is eating super taco right now. Why didn't you let me know, Mike? I'm a little bit jealous now, even though I had this massive burrito. Jeff asking about Jihad Campbell. No reported meetings between the 49ers and Jihad Campbell, but if he goes on a 30 visit and we find out about it, I'll be sure to let you know. Jihad Campbell, the linebacker out of Alabama, who might be the best player in this whole draft. Well, I made a video yesterday or 2 days ago on it. It would not shock me if the 49ers did pick Jihad Campbell in this NFL draft. Would I be mildly surprised? Maybe, but I wouldn't be shocked, and I can't even say I'd be surprised since I've already made a video on it. Linebacker is really important to this team, and they might think that Jihad is the best player in this draft, at least best player when they come to pick at number 11. I mean, this guy is really good. Now, he's coming off the labrum surgery, but maybe that makes the price more agreeable for the 49ers. Have I been to Superior Dairy in Hanford? Of course. Place is legendary. All the dairy farmers, the Portuguese dairy farmers between here and Hanford, and then they've got Superior Dairy downtown with their famous ice cream. That place is gluttonous, but it's really good. The best sandwiches video is coming. I'm doing interviews, and I'm traveling around doing interviews for the best San Francisco sandwiches video. Just was asked about it. And my last interview is coming up in early April. I have to fly down to LA to do it. I'm doing this right. So everybody hit the subscribe button. You're going to get your best sandwiches in San Francisco video. We're going to talk some 49ers until then. That's going to be right as the draft is coming up a couple weeks before. So let's make sure that you're locked in until then. Anybody complaining that I'm not seeing your messages? Guys, I'm on my phone right now. The phone's on this little tripod. I almost have to squint at the phone to see some of these messages. Only one comes in at a time. So if somebody else asks a question after your question, you know, it's a good chance I haven't seen it. That's why hopefully Mike is able to pass along some of the best questions as a text message. Because sometimes I see people complaining, but I didn't see their actual question. So it's a little bit tough. Mike, what do we got? While I wait, those of you just joining, this is the pool that I didn't learn how to swim in this pool, or maybe I did, but this is the diving board. See, I've set up like, this is my little tripod stand. This is the diving board right here, and it's a little rusted. It's not in great shape anymore. So I don't know if, yeah, I don't think that we want to test this diving board. I think if I bounced on this thing, the whole thing would kind of bounce down into the water and flip up with me as I flipped into the pool. But we had a nice setup here. You can see the balcony. It should be a really nice sunset in Visalia. Am I going to the owners meeting? Yes, I'm going to be in West Palm Beach. A week from now, I'm going to be flying out to the owners meeting. Got a busy week. We're going to be in San Francisco this week. Visalia first, downtown Visalia show tomorrow. Everybody can look forward to the downtown Visalia show. Why don't we head over to the creek? You guys are going to like this. Now, the creek, unfortunately, is dry right now, but we can see the garden. And it's called Packwood Creek in Visalia. Take a little look. Oh, look at that sunset. This is beautiful. It's like this overgrown entry into the garden. So the creek is dry. Now we used to have, the garden used to be much more developed. Unfortunately, not anymore. A few trees over there. This is gonna start flowing big time once the snow melt is let out of the Sierra Nevada. And you guys saw how much snow there was up there. So I can't wait till this creek is full. What we used to do is we couldn't use hard baseballs because we'd shatter windows, but we used to hit tennis balls from way over there, other side of the pool, out into here and pretend like this was full of water, and we'd pretend it was McCovey Cove. It was back when the Giants first built their ballpark in 2000, 25 years ago. Now, some of the remnants of the garden are right here, but for the most part, this place is just a little relic over by Packwood Creek. You could take this creek all the way down to the park here in Visalia. Don't jump. Yeah, I'm not going to jump into a bed of sand. The water was perfect at the Dolphin Club today, from Mike. Hi, Mike. That's a nice comment. Well, I'm going to be at the Dolphin Club this week, so I'll say hi to you, Mike, and I'll say hi to everybody out there. Let's head back into the backyard. This reminds me right here of the ivy at Wrigley Field. I know it's ivy. So there's a legendary story here. We got to get my dad out here. Jeez, this thing. Let's close this. There we go. So one of my buddies from Germany, his name is Marek from Germany. Marek is Czech, but he came over here and he spent like a month with us in, when was it? I probably was 10 years old. He might have been 12, so probably around 1998. And we were playing an intense game of pickle here, like baseball pickle, back and forth, right? You try to avoid the rundown. And my dad was chasing my buddy Mark down, and it got really competitive. And it was a full speed sprint going here. And I was just watching because my dad was trying to tag him. I was part of the defense on pickle. My dad and I were throwing the baseball back and forth. Mark was running away, and my dad decided not to throw the ball to me. He thought that he could chase him down, and they both ran through this fence right behind me. And I believe that may be one of the reasons why there is now some softening, ivy-looking growth on the fence. But back then there wasn't, and I swear my dad ran right through this fence right here. We could even take a look at it. It's a legendary spot in the backyard. And there's pictures. We'll find them at some point. There's pictures of him and his face just bleeding. It's really funny. So I'll always remember this lawn for that. I mean, it's not that big. So if you get people running full speed, then injuries can happen for sure. All right, I'm ready for some more questions. I wasn't paying attention. As you could tell, I was telling you guys a few stories here over the past few minutes. Let's see the pool now. This used to be a hot tub, but I think the pipes broke. So we filled it in, fire pit. I will be at the owners' meetings though. Are the 49ers high on Derek Harmon? I think it's hard not to high on Derek Harmon. Guy's an awesome pass rusher. I mean, his pass rushing statistically was the best in all of college football this past year. When you look at the pressure rate and, just the ability to get to the quarterback, you've got a long, athletic defensive tackle. The 49ers have done very well with long, athletic defensive tackles from the state of Oregon, or from the University of Oregon. DeForest Buckner, Eric Armstead, or Armstead obviously from Sacramento. So I would be very surprised that the 49ers did not like what they saw from Derek Harmon. How about we go check out the sunset up here? We're gonna make our way up, guys. All the way to the balcony. Is Burford in the mix for swing tackle? Yes, he is. And I think that the 49ers are now looking at Burford as a tackle and not a guard. That is my read on the entire Spencer Burford situation. All right, now we got the money shot. Look at that. Are linebackers interchangeable like how safeties are? Not as much. The safeties are definitely interchangeable. Linebackers are not nearly as interchangeable because one has the radio in his helmet. So I think that the mic is a very pronounced position. And then the will stays on the field even if you're nickel. The strong side linebacker, that's going to be a little bit different. That's a position that you have out there when you're expecting run or offenses are in more run-heavy formations. So when I said that we used to hit the baseballs or tennis balls so they wouldn't be as hard and as damaging, pitcher would be right here. Pitch would go from right here to right here, and then right-handed hitter, as right-handed, you would hit it over the pool. The flight of the baseball would go all the way over here, and it would land in the creek. The creek when it had water in it, and that was our McCovey Cove here in Visalia. We could finish this show up with sunset behind us. McCovey Cove or Packwood Creek. Who will be the cornerback on the right side? The two cornerbacks for the 49ers are going to be Lenore and Renato Green, with Lenore potentially moving into nickel with his versatility, and then I think Trey Brown is going to be the third cornerback. Why did Aaron Banks leave is another question, because Aaron Banks was a mediocre guard who got paid, what, $77 million by the Packers? He wasn't that good. Like, the pass protecting metrics for Aaron Banks were mediocre to below average over his time. I don't think he was a terrible player for the 49ers, but he wasn't a guy that you can go out and pay that kind of money. I don't know if the Packers are going to be happy with that investment. I think Banks, great dude in the locker room, big guard, but never a dominant guard. And the 49ers actually got better play from Ben Barch last year when he was filling in for Aaron Banks while he was hurt. Barch was actually really good. So, I mean, if you get Barch for $1 million versus Aaron Banks for $19 million, what's the more efficient play there? I think the more efficient play is Barch for $1 million. Do I think the 49ers draft a quarterback in the late rounds again? If there's somebody they like, why not? You should always be adding talent at that most important position. But, I mean, Brock Purdy was such a godsend for the 49ers because they really liked him. I mean, we all know the Steve Slowick story. He was the area scout over in Iowa. We know that Brian Griese really liked Brock Purdy after a lot of Zoom calls with him. And then he was sitting there at pick 262, so the 49ers went for it. We all know that he shouldn't have slipped that far in the draft. That's been the focus of the crazy story regarding Brock Purdy. But it's not every day that you're going to have a player of that caliber waiting that low in the draft. And even the 49ers didn't know how good Brock Purdy was, right? If they did, they would have drafted him a lot sooner. But if you see a quarterback that you like late, go ahead and grab him. Last year, they liked Mordecai, and they signed him as an undrafted free agent. He's going to be that third quarterback for the 49ers unless they pick somebody else up. But even if they do, that quarterback is going to start behind Mordecai on the depth chart. Do I think that Matt Hennessy has a good chance of beating out Jake Brendel for starting center? I think it's actually, I don't know if it's a good chance, but I think he has a chance. Because Hennessy, he has started at center before. Remember that Matt Hennessy was the Falcons' starting center. I think he was a third-round draft pick. And he succeeded Alex Mack in 2021 as a starter. That's when Mack went to San Francisco. So the fact that Hennessy has NFL starting center experience, you know, after having learned from Alex Mack for a year in 2020 with the Falcons, he was then Drew Dahlman's predecessor. I mean, the lineage here for Matt Hennessy makes sense. So it wasn't all too shocking that the 49ers were able to poach him or wanted to poach him from Atlanta's practice squad. And, you know, since they didn't go after a center in free agency, and since we don't expect a rookie to be able to start at that position, even though that started to happen a little bit more often lately in the NFL, I would say that, yes, there is a good chance that Matt Hennessy is the guy that's going to give Jake Brendel the primary competition. But I would also say that the 49ers seem to like Brendel a whole heck of a lot more than outsiders like Jake Brendel. For whatever reason, I mean, this is just what I'm gathering from the 49ers, what I'm gathering from Chris Furster's attitude about this situation. Furster coached him way back in Miami. That's the reason why Jake Brendel came to the 49ers. They have more belief in Jake Brendel than your average YouTube commenter or X poster, right? So for better or for worse, I think that Jake Brendel's the odds-on favorite to be the 49ers starting center next season. How about the sunset? This is awesome. Those of you who are just joining right now, this is the house in Visalia. This is where I grew up. We moved here in 1992. People want more Margot. Well, tell her that she needs to get over here. She's in Tennessee right now, and I'm in California. Margot will be coming on a little bit. She was on the show, I think, the night that Joey Bosa got released from the Chargers. And then Joey didn't sign with the 49ers. I think she might have been on the show when Joey ended up signing elsewhere. I don't remember. Somebody asked if I've ever jumped in the pool from the balcony. That's a really good way to cripple yourself. And I'm not going to do that. Even now, I'm going to be careful. As you can see, it's not that close. Like, you would have to get a running start, and even then, I don't think you'd make it. Guys, let's flip this around, okay? So, say that you're going to do this, and this is why I'm advocating not to do it. You'd have to get the running start right here, somehow vault over this. That wouldn't end up good. Like, that's a good five yards. Like, that'd be tough. I mean, a Buffalo Bills fan, they do crazy stuff jumping on top of tables, but I don't think they would try jumping in this pool. Now, it'd be a different story if the pool came in closer to here, but I still wouldn't recommend it. Do not try that at home, wherever your home is. Although what you can do is sit back and enjoy a nice Central Valley sunset. Look at this, nicest time of the year. This is when you should sell real estate in Visalia. When it's 70 degrees, you get skies like this. Up in the mountains, there's still a lot of snow, but it is, of course, melting. They may get one more snowstorm out there, actually. We're going to be in Montana next